Good afternoon, everyone. For who are joining us just now, I'll repeat what I said in my first interview. My name is Stollmeyer. I'm the founder and executive director of Defend Democracy. And today we are doing live interviews here in Vilnius, Lithuania, and we are at the Forum on the Future of Democracy. I'm about to do the second interview of today, and my guest is William Yang. William, you are a freelance correspondent covering the Greater China region, and you are based in Taiwan. Now, for our viewers, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and about your work?
Hi everyone, my name is William Yang. I am a freelance correspondent mostly covering the Greater China region for international media outlets like Voice of America and Deutsche Welle. I have been a journalist for almost 8 years now. I started my career covering the domestic politics and foreign policy in Taiwan, and then later expanded my coverage scope to other parts of the Chinese-speaking world. So right now, I mainly focus on China, China's influence in different parts of the world, China's human rights situation, China's civil society, and also the situation in Hong Kong, where we have been seeing dramatic changes over the last few years.
Indeed, and later today we'll be speaking with someone from Hong Kong. Now, today we are here in Lithuania at the Forum on the Future of Democracy. What does democracy mean to you, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think democracy for me is, as a Taiwanese, as a journalist, it's something that guarantees my way of life. So, for example, as a Taiwanese, we have long been living under the constant threat from China trying to unify or impose its system onto Taiwan. So having democracy means that we have our way to express our opinions through elections, through referendums. And these actions, in fact, have all been very important for Taiwan to defend itself, to safeguard its sovereignty and system, and also just the everyday lifestyle that Taiwanese people have been able to enjoy. And then as a journalist, working in a democracy means that my work will not be infringed by any government-imposed rules. There are press freedom, there are rooms for me to access important documents, to ask critical questions towards authorities and officials, and also use the important reporting that I conduct to inform the society without a way from the government to try to interfere or to try to control the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Including via new technologies.
Yes, for
sure. Yeah. So, if I'm not mistaken, you studied in the United States, but you're now back in Taiwan. Can you name some similarities and or differences between their two democracies?
Yeah, I think one similarity is that both the US and Taiwan have very vibrant party politics, which means that political parties are very engaged in policy making, in civil society engagement. We are seeing a lot of different involvement and actions from political parties when it comes to engaging with the public. And it's also both are a two-party system, which means that we mostly see the change of power between two major parties. But the one big difference, I think, in Taiwan versus the US is that I would say the elections in Taiwan are more straightforward. The system is less complicated like the United States. It has a legislature, kind of like the parliament, where people elect lawmakers that will be amending, passing laws that will then, that are either recommended by the government or that are basically proposed by the lawmakers. And then we have the presidential election where we will elect the executive government members, but mostly the president, who will then be appointing the cabinets to form the government itself. Whereas I think in the United States, we have the state level politics, we have the federal level politics, and then you have the House and the Senate, and it's a much complicated system compared to Taiwan, and their, I think, electoral college is also a very unique form of, I think, reflecting democracy in a way. And so I think, but what is, I think, connecting Taiwan and the United States is that both are very strongly upholding rule of law, which is very important these days, I think, in different parts of the world or even on the international stage. And both are also very committed to maintaining security status quo, especially across the Taiwan Strait, through, I mean, democratic means. So that, and then I think both are countries that are continuing to try to deepen their relationship with other like-minded countries. So I think one of the most important example over the last few years is the flourishing of the bilateral relations between Taiwan and Lithuania. Taiwan opened its representative office here in Vilnius about 2 years ago, and we have seen a lot of global attention on the deepening of the ties on different fronts. And I think in turn, Lithuania also started to even see further deepening of their interactions with the US as well. So I think this is one example where Taiwan and the US are both very committed to continuing to help defend the rules-based order by deepening their cooperation with other like-minded countries.
Great, thank you. You are based in Taiwan, and I recently visited for the first time. It was only 2.5 days, but I met civil society organizations, and it's a very vibrant scene, and I really loved it. But I could sense, of course, it was not easy. I couldn't ignore it even if I wanted to. The recent geopolitical tensions, have they changed your work as a journalist?
Yes, I think the rising military and security threats coming from China has then brought Taiwan into the global spotlight, but in a way that is being framed as a very small frontline democracy that's kind of sandwiched in between two great powers in the world that are engaged in this, I think, competition, long-term competition that doesn't seem an end to it. And so I think in a way, it's great that we're seeing a lot more international discussion and attention paying to Taiwan, but it's mostly through this hard power lens, which is the potential looming invasion from China to achieve the unification with Taiwan, and how democratic countries in the region or around the world could play a role to help reduce that tension or delay that possibility, and to deter China from adopting the invasion as their option of achieving unification. So a lot of my work in the past probably will focus more on China's own civil society's development, the crackdown on human rights people. But now in the last year and a half or 2 years, I have to start covering a lot more about security aspect of the regional dynamics. So including China's military activities in the region, including the US deepening its collaboration with neighboring countries of Taiwan, including Japan and the Philippines, and also looking at how China's aggression is changing different countries' calculation when it comes to Taiwan. We see, for example, even a country like Lithuania, which is tens of thousands of miles away from Taiwan, even put forward their own Indo-Pacific strategy. And that, I think, it's another reflection of how the scope of my work now has to reach to different parts of the world that are all thinking about the same thing, which is how is this potential conflict across the Taiwan Strait going to affect their own country, affect their own country's interest.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I hear a lot of people in my like, let's say, colleagues who have like either recently visited Taiwan or are planning to. So it's really on many people's minds. I suppose we can look at China's behavior toward Taiwan as a form of a sharp power, also known as hybrid or political warfare. Are there any lessons we can learn from the Taiwanese situation and from the Taiwanese democratic resilience that perhaps countries like Ukraine and Moldova could learn from? Or the other way around, if perhaps Taiwan can learn something from the Ukrainians and their resilience?
Yeah, I think this process has already been ongoing. We've seen some Ukrainian academics coming to Taiwan since the beginning of the Ukrainian war last year, and then sharing a lot of different insights about civil defense, because that's an area I think where Ukraine has really done very well since the war started. And that's an area where Taiwan hasn't really started thinking about what they should do in order to prepare the civilians for a looming attack such as an invasion by a major power like China. And on the other hand, I think the Ukrainians have also been learning quite a bit about how Taiwan deals with disinformation coming from China, because similar to Ukraine, in a way that Taiwan shares the same language with China. So for China to launch any disinformation campaigns against Taiwan is much easier. The threshold is much easier. There's less language barrier for them to actually achieve that. Whereas in Ukraine, parts of Ukraine speaks Russian. So I think that's also a form of disinformation that they can tackle. So I think both sides have been engaged in a lot of these workshops and exchanges and even trainings about sharing ideas about how to deal with disinformation. And, I think going forward, another form maybe for hopefully post-war Ukraine and countries like Moldova, which is facing a lot of, I think, internal divisions because of the external influence coming from a major power like Russia, is how to re-establish a democratic system that can guarantee that elections and campaigns and I think politics will not be so much, so easily influenced by outside powers and disinformation and influence campaigns, cognitive warfare is coming from an adversary like China or Russia. I think Taiwan over the last 2.5 decades have demonstrated that it is able to uphold democracy and push forward elections in a very fair and I think credible and way that without, even with the attempts from China to try to interfere in every election that Taiwan is having. And at the same time, allowing and having civil society organizations working with the government to enhance people's awareness about these disinformation campaigns, enhance people's media literacy and abilities to identify these campaigns and how to prevent themselves from falling victim to these campaigns. I think these are maybe the things that Taiwan have been doing that other countries that are facing similar issues might be able to learn from.
Indeed, and I think it's very, very useful not just to learn from countries like Taiwan and Ukraine, but for also countries, any democracies can learn from each other by exchanging more and learning from each other's best practices. And I think we should do that more. So one more question for you. If there is any message or thought that you would like our audience to remember, either from our conversation or from the Forum of Democracy on the Future of Democracy, or on democracy in general, what would your message be?
I think my message would be that we are at an age where democracy is becoming more fragile, is facing a lot more challenges because of the fact that autocratic countries are starting to see some openings for them to try to capitalize on these weaknesses or challenges that democracy originally has. But as we see the examples of how democratic countries can build their own network, their own connections between each other through the examples, I think, in Taiwan, Lithuania, Ukraine, or Taiwan with other like-minded Baltic countries. Our foreign minister was just here on a visit, even though there's no diplomatic ties between Taiwan and these countries. But I think these examples are very important reminders that democracy is still worth protecting and worth defending. And the best way for that is for democratic countries, or people in democratic countries, to come together, find different creative ways to strengthen and deepen their exchanges and deepen their understandings.
Fantastic. Hear, hear. Great. Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you.